I want to talk about the brain and in relation to hormones. So let's look
Hmm.
at teenagers. So we know that for some reason, teenagers, if I'm not mistaken, have a lower level of dopamine compared to the childhood and adulthood. So they need more stimulation to, or they need more activities to feel that
Hmm.
reward. So that's one thing. When you're looking at the brain and tech addiction, can you share with us, for parents to understand in a simple way, what is happening with all those hormones when their children are on the devices, and they might be saying, hey, it's dinner time, and they don't want to move, they don't want to use a bathroom. And if you take it from them, especially the little ones, they
Hmm.
throw themselves on the floor and they have this massive tantrum or more meltdown. Can
Hmm.
you explain what is happening in the brain
Yeah.
with the hormones? Why our children seem like they're going crazy when
Yeah.
you try to pull them away from it?
Right. Well, that's an excellent question. It's the answer is a little bit complex. So I'm going to try to divide it up into the things you brought up into, because there's the reward system in the brain, and then there's the hormones that are released into the body. Um, and I'm not asked a lot about hormones. I think that's great that you brought that up. And I want to come back to it because first I want to clarify, a little bit more of what's going on in the brain than just change in dopamine levels. What's happening? I think the most activity is going on at the receptor for dopamine. So, for example, the postsynaptic receptor for dopamine, which is called a D2 receptor, um, it's what allows the teenager to feel instant gratification, right? And that's what really drives them. It's not just to get dopamine; it's to get dopamine to the receptor, right, so that they can sense that pleasure. And what happens is uh, when you're exposed to very stimulating content for a very long amount of time, you become desensitized to the pleasure you get because your dopamine receptors go down. Not necessarily the dopamine itself, but the receptors to dopamine, so that you can't actually feel the dopamine. So that you may be playing the same game you were playing before, but you're not enjoying it as much. And now you're just playing it because when you stop playing, you're going to get withdrawal, not because it's really as pleasurable for you. So that's what's going on at the brain level, at least one of the things that are going on. And then what's going on at the hormone level is that, one of the hormones that regulates us a lot is cortisol, right? And that's the hormone that we make in response to stress, right? And so, um, we that needs to be studied a lot more, like the effect of gaming on cortisol levels, or the effect of cortisol levels on gaming. In other words, when kids are more stressed out, are they more likely to game? And then when kids or get online, or when kids get online, does their cortisol levels drop or do they go up? These are the things that need to be studied more and more. But I mean, when you're also talking about hormones in teens, I mean, another thing that comes to a lot of people's minds are sex hormones. And one of the big problems that people are having with screen addiction that's probably not talked about enough is pornography addiction. And plus there's a lot of like sexual predators online, and sometimes it can be a dangerous combination when a teenager is you know developing sexually for the first time and trying to explore, and trying to understand what's going on with their body, and trying to sort of mitigate their hormone release, which can be intense for them. Having this giant world that's easily accessible to them, online, the world of pornography and social media, um, that sends all sorts of like hypersexualized messaging. So that's another thing that we can really look at, is and that where hormones play a big role. So I really liked you bringing up hormones.
Yes, because I think parents need to understand what is triggering that meltdown
Yeah.
with both, but it doesn't matter the age group really, because they
Mm-hmm.
experience that kind of massive shift. And
Right.
what is it for when parents see that kind of meltdown, regardless of the age? How can they manage that? A better question is, how then can they better manage the use of technology, being mindful that there's also online schooling for some children?
Yeah.
How can they manage that to reduce the level of meltdown with children?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing that there's two parts to figuring that out. One is how you respond to the meltdown when the meltdown is happening, and another part is how do you prevent the meltdowns from happening, right? And there's probably much more parents can do to prevent it than answers to what to do when it's happening. Although, of course, if you make safety your number one guideline, that's a good start for how to respond. But as far as uh, preventing the meltdowns, I think that um, consistency is really important and balance is really important. Um, Parents have this view of technology, or they have this view of their kids' activities where they tend to divide the activities into um, what activities are productive versus what activities are just their kids playing and having fun and wasting time. And I think that we need a more brain friendly view of how to break down our kids' activities, because it's different. It has a different effect on the brain when a child is on a screen taking classes, for example, than when they're on a screen playing video games or streaming a video. Um, so the terms I came up with to divide those types of activities are high dopamine activity and low dopamine activity, which I call HDA and LDA for short. And high dopamine activities are any activities on or offline that cause instant and continuous gratification, thus releasing more dopamine. Low dopamine activities are activities that require more patience and delayed gratification, such as the obvious ones like schoolwork on or offline, but also, you know, um, activities that may be fun and enjoyable for your kids, but the fun, the reward is delayed. For example, playing a board game as opposed to a video game, or painting pictures or playing a musical instrument, or even playing a sport. Um, you have to put a lot more effort into it before you get the reward, and the reward is more delayed. So you're not getting the continuous dopamine release, even though you're getting some dopamine. So those I categorize as low dopamine activities. And you can even have other screen activities that are low dopamine, like um, doing something in Photoshop, or something with coding, right? So what I encourage parents to do is to divide their kids' activities into HDA and LDA, and then try to have a balance. And the more of a balance you can get, the more of it's the more of a balance you can get, the fewer meltdowns you get, and the more consistent you are with their structure, with their schedule. The fewer meltdowns they are. Kids like to know what to expect. They like their life to have enough routine to it that they know what's going to happen next. And if they're looking at a timer and they expect their block to end, they're less likely to have a meltdown than if you're coming in and saying, okay, you've been on for 5 hours, it's time to get off.